What's going on YouTube? Jamie Potter here, PhD in Organizational Behavior from the Wharton School of Business at the University of Pennsylvania. Today I'm talking about the ever important topic of leadership. It turns out there are probably 10 or 20 different types of leadership from this one review article. Fortunately, I am not going to bore you with all of those details. I'm just going to talk about the two primary types of leadership that are discussed over and over the past 30-40 years. And those are transactional leadership and transformational leadership. Transactional leadership is this idea that as a leader, my mission, my goal with subordinates and teams is just to set expectations and set goals, and then if people hit those expectations and hit those goals, I reward them, right? It's a very transactional relationship. On the other side of the spectrum is transformational leadership. This is actually composed of 4 different parts. One being you are an idealized influence on the team. People sort of look to you and admire you and want to be like you. You really influence the team positively and are generally optimistic. The other part is you challenge people intellectually. You know, when you come to a business problem or whatever you're trying to solve, you sort of push people to think in new and different ways, not just take the obvious solution. 3, you also motivate them. You sort of inspire them to go above and beyond and sort of identify with you and the company and the mission that the team is working on. And 4 is you really personalize things for people on the team. You look to each individual and you don't just have a one-size-fits-all approach to development or getting to know people, but you really understand them as people, try to push them on their weaknesses, develop their strengths, really get to know them as a person and personalize the way you interact with them, whether just in terms of broad talent development or feedback sessions, etc. And so if you were to look at these 2 types of leadership, and I ask you which one is better, I think many people, probably all people would say, well, transformational leadership, kind of by definition, right? You've just said transactional leadership is this very A to B, I set expectations and I reward, whereas transformational leadership is I inspire and motivate and challenge and personalize my feedback for people. Obviously, many people would say transformational leadership is better. Well, fortunately, as always, these 2 types of leadership have been compared to one another in this really fantastic 2003 study that actually looks at people in the US military in this sort of simulated training environment. The professors were able to get in here to study the teams, to study not only the leaders and whether they were more transformational or transactional, but then to see, based on that, how did the teams perform in this sort of semi-controlled simulated environment where they had to work together, often in teams of 30 or so in these platoons, with a platoon sergeant and a platoon leader above them. Look at how did they perform based on the leadership style of the platoon sergeant or leader. And what's interesting here, again, what's expected, and even for me in rereading the paper, I expected, well, transformational leadership is far better, right?
Until the magician produces a rabbit from a hat, like that.
Actually, both transactional leadership and transformational leadership lead to pretty consistent and equal levels of performance, which is really fascinating. The authors kind of dig into it to understand why that is. And it turns out transactional leadership, as you guess, is, when you hear it, it's a very simple relationship. And often that's all that leadership needs to be to get performance, right? Sometimes people don't want a leader who's inspiring them and really motivating them. They just want someone who tells them what the job is and they get it done. So it's really interesting because the paper shows, for one, that they're pretty equal in predicting performance, but 2, it shows how they predict performance or why they lead to higher performance. And that is via higher team cohesion and team potency. So cohesion being obviously that we all get along and we enjoy ourselves more and we feel cohesive as a team, as a unit. And potency being kind of group confidence. We feel able to get the job done based on the resources that we have and the team that we have in place. So again, really interesting paper here in that it shows you that transformational leadership is not always the only answer. It's not always being that extroverted leader who's on TV and motivating and inspiring people. Sometimes being a transactional leader and just letting people know here's what's expected of you, and if you hit it, I will reward you. That can also be as good for increasing team performance. And I think I really love this paper because having taught previously in TFA, you see that everyone sort of wants to be that extroverted, inspiring teacher, but some people are just more introverted. They're less of sort of show people as they're teaching. I was very much a showman as a teacher, but not everybody is. And sometimes, even often, those more introverted, quiet teachers really are fantastic leaders of the classroom. And I love this paper because it shows that we shouldn't all be trying to be extroverted and trying to be inspiring and motivating. If that comes to you naturally, then definitely do that. But it's not always necessary. If you're introverted, if you're more quiet, it does not mean you're a less good leader. In fact, you can be as good, if not better, in a lot of ways. So I hope you enjoyed this video. It's a really cool one here talking about the broad topic of leadership. I'm happy to answer more questions about leadership. I'm going to link to the broader review article that talks about the many different newer types of leadership in the literature beyond just transactional and transformational if this is of interest to you, and I'm happy to answer any questions about leadership in general in the comments or on LinkedIn. Otherwise, check out my other videos, subscribe to my channel, and I will see you next week. Bye.